So I'm gonna stand out here just because I'm short and behind the podium. And I want to thank you so much. I realize that anybody who has, stands up and says, I'm from California and we're going to talk about climate change, it's sort of suspect from the very beginning. So, with all apologies, the way that I say it, hey, I'm from California. In California, we jump off the cliff first, and then everybody ends up seeing what's going to happen. But I'm here not to present, oh, we're California, here's all the stuff we are doing, but to give a broader overview of energy efficiency, why I and so many others do see it as an incredibly important aspect of how we can move ahead on the Clean Power Plan. I put in a little bit on health. I'm obviously not a health expert. And then I'm going to end up talking a bit about where I see really some of the exciting issues going on and opportunities in energy efficiency. Before I begin, just two quick things. The specific project that I am working on at Stanford that I welcome anyone who is interested is thinking about, researching, writing about what we call the next level of energy efficiency. That we have had great success in getting to where we are, but frankly, a large part of it has been reliance, at least through the utility programs, on a single widget, a CFL. And that doesn't really get us to the level that we need to get for massive reductions in use for climate, which I'll be talking about. And so what I'll speak a little bit at the end, but what we're really trying to think through is what are the new technologies, what are the new policy rules, what are the new market forces that we could bring in to take us to another level entirely. The second point that I wanted to make just before I started is that even though I am most certainly not a health expert, my background is I am a lawyer, a recovering lawyer. I'm not practicing anymore, but I'm always happy to be at law schools, is that before I was a commissioner, I had a consulting practice in San Francisco and tended to represent non-utilities, a lot of government entities, some of the environmental groups, some of the large customers. And one of my clients, it turned out, was the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and that is the state air quality agency in Southern California. And all those pictures that you saw today that showed, the red or whatever color it was for the southeast, if you looked closely, you would pretty much also see that bullet coming right into Southern California where Los Angeles is, that it's in a pretty unique basin, and it has cars. Basically it has. And so it's just had a tremendous problem in history of smog and major, major health impacts. And so what happened 20 years ago was that this air agency, the South Coast, wanted to think about how could it tie together its air quality policies with energy. And I actually worked with them on linking them up to the state energy regulators, the PUC, for developing a specific program that would operate in the air quality district that would focus on energy efficiency and back then just the very beginnings of renewables. I can't even remember if the renewables were built. And it had nothing, there was no discussion at that time about carbon. It was, my memory was it was all about NOx and really trying to reduce what smog you could have. There ended up being some very good results from that, and I think it's fair to say the South Coast has become a real leader of trying to understand both health impacts from air pollution, but then how our energy mix can really help on dealing with those health impacts. So I feel in some ways the circles come around that now, 20 years later, we're here talking about it in an even more important aspect, that of dealing with climate change. So let's see what's going to happen. Okay, great. There's my cover page. I'm going to really do 3 areas fairly quickly. The one is just an overview of some of the statistics and facts we have on energy efficiency nationally. The second one is a little bit on health. You've heard much more this morning. And then the third part, as I said, is going to be on looking ahead in the area of energy efficiency. This is a chart. It comes from the Energy Information Agency, so it's valid federal information. And it basically is tracking our load growth over a 70-year, well, we have it historically, it's about 60 years, and then going forward. And what it shows is that our load growth and demand for electricity has been declining. The jagged is the actual, the curve is on some level levelized, I believe. But the important takeaway from this is that energy efficiency does not mean that your production and your growth and your economic health decreases. It's as simple as thinking about if you have a building. One of the boring things of energy efficiency is it can be boring. It is about putting insulation in walls and attics and buildings is some of the most important stuff you can do. Nobody, I guarantee, wakes up and says, oh, I think I'll think about insulation. Unless, of course, you work for an insulation company. But you can think about, okay, you go into a building and you put insulation in. Does that mean that the people in the building are less productive? No, in fact, it means many studies show they may be more productive because it's just a building that is better at heating and cooling. But what it also means is that whoever is the owner of that building is putting less money out on a monthly and yearly basis in what they're paying for electricity and possible natural gas. And that's why I and so many people say this makes sense, because you can continue to have very strong economic growth, but at the same time, you're actually saving money in terms of what people are paying for electricity. And the long-term scaling up of energy efficiency has been focused around, it's not just something that helps an individual who does it, but because we have a system in the United States where you have utilities that build power plants and transmission lines that then transmit that power to people, and those people use the power and they pay the bills. If you aggregate up energy efficiency across hundreds and thousands of homes and businesses, you can actually avoid building a more expensive power plant and a more expensive transmission line. And that's sort of another one of these parts of energy efficiency that keeps on giving, that it is not just on an individual level, but it's helped on what we call a system-wide basis. And it has fundamentally worked because of this type of a chart that shows that we still can have a very strong economy even though our actual overall energy use does decrease. So here's another way of looking at how we're doing approaching energy efficiency in the United States. Again, this information comes from the Energy Information Agency, and it's looking at from 1989 to 2011. So we're talking about 30 years. The top bars are how much each and every year across the United States we've been able to save from energy efficiency. And another aspect of energy efficiency, of why it's such a great product, is that once you install something, if you put in an efficient light or you put in the insulation, it doesn't just work for that one single year. It keeps on those energy savings year after year after year. And that's going to be one of the interesting parts of the Clean Power Plan, is how those metrics are developed and then implemented to track that savings and growth. But we've had 30 years experience, you can see, of tracking this. And that's why I and so many are optimistic that we can have energy efficiency reflected in the power plant. So you can see we actually have had a tremendous uptake in energy efficiency in the last few years, and that's because at a state-by-state level, we've really seen strong interest, as well as we've had some very important new federal standards as far as appliances that can be sold in the United States that have to have a certain level of efficiency have gone into effect. And then I don't know if you can see down on the bottom is the blue, and that's how much additional savings we get each year, and that's why it then builds up over time. So just think about this. If the EPA had put out a proposed plan and it said, we're only going to deal within the fence, and we don't care about anything that was happening on the outside, it would essentially be taking this chart and just putting a great big X through it, and just ignoring that these are the types of savings that we've been able to get and the large increase. And that's one of the reasons, especially if you're not immersed in the details of the Clean Power Plan, why it is so incredibly important that EPA has said we are willing to count energy efficiency, because these are huge savings. If we didn't have this efficiency, this would be the fossil fire emissions that we would be having. Here's some other statistics just to let you know of what we've been doing. It's in every area. The residential energy use per capita is down 11% basically over the last 35 years. And again, it is not in our homes that we no longer have refrigerators. It is not the exact opposite. Our TVs have grown. We have an incredible number of what we call plug lows, all those computer devices and our smartphones and everything else. But the per capita use has gone down, and that's because the appliances themselves have gotten much more efficient, and we haven't noticed any degradation at all in the quality of what's being used. Commercial use per square foot down 18% since its peak in 1999. So that's 25 years that we have been able, when it was at the highest use, to really be making our buildings much more efficient. Industrial use per dollar value added down about a third relative to 1980. So again, you can see in all sectors of our economy, transportation down 12% below its peak in 2007, in large part because we brought on additional national fuel standards. And in this conference, we're talking mostly about on the customer side of the meter, but we've also, those transmission and distribution lines that you use to bring power from power plants to the end user. There's been some great new technology and economies that have come into play. So you can again look at over a 25-year period of time, the losses, how much you lose from the transmission have gone down over 25%. So you can think about everywhere in our industry, we have been making great improvements in efficiency. This is just a quick look overall, again, at a national level on energy efficiency. I don't know if you can read it, but the green is the energy efficiency, because that's the one, when you put it in, it's less expensive than the other alternatives. The others are a range of different supply side with levelized costs, which again come through in a range, but wind, coal, nuclear, combined cycle, they have varying costs, but you can see that energy efficiency is the clear winner, which is why we want to make sure in the Clean Power Plan it is firmly used. We have an estimate of savings just last year alone, because remember we saw that chart go up, $800 billion. That's money that people would have otherwise put into paying their local utility or paying whoever provides them with electricity and natural gas that they didn't have to pay. And that's money that then stays in the local economy. That's one of the most important things, because you're not writing that check or having it automatically deducted, and you can use it for other very productive aspects of economic growth. So the benefits include jobs, economic growth, fewer energy imports, cleaner environment, and better health. And there's just a whole range of studies that have been done on why this is so significant. I don't know if you can read this, but we can certainly make it available. This was a study that was done a number of years ago, again from the International Energy Agency, called Capturing the Multiple Benefits of Energy Efficiency. And it's particularly important in terms of today's conference and the Clean Power Plan, because energy efficiency historically has been something that has been done by utilities, usually at the direction of their regulator. It is therefore typically looked at in terms of economic savings, that the traditional terms that we use for determining whether ratepayer dollars can be used to fund energy efficiency programs done by a utility is it cheaper than building a power plant or a transmission line? Will it have dollar savings on bills? What that leaves out of this entire equation is there's a whole number of reasons to do energy efficiency just beyond the fact that it saves money on bills. But because we've run energy efficiency through the utility world, that's basically the parameter that we've had to look at. But the Clean Power Plan gives us this opportunity to really say, well, that's just one piece of the equation. It's a really important piece, but you can do so much more, and there's so many other reasons to do energy efficiency if you understand, quantify, and count the non-energy benefits. So you have greenhouse gas emissions. That's what's starting to happen with the Clean Power Plan. Energy security, energy delivery, energy prices. Overall, when you are doing energy efficiency, you can think about that the price impact on a macro level may go down. Industrial productivity, we have lots of studies show that you actually will be more productive in a building that's running well. Poverty alleviation, when you make a real effort to ensure that in low-income houses that you've got good insulation, that you've got good lighting, that helps then on people not having to use as much on their very limited incomes to send off to the local utility. We've talked about local air pollution, employment. Much of energy efficiency is done at the local level. People putting insulation in, people putting in lighting, people putting in windows. Those are local jobs, and that's a real benefit. Disposable income, having more money, et cetera. So these are all benefits that there's a wide range of research now going on to try to help quantify it. So this I put in my slides when I sent off last Thursday, but I saw that you've already heard about them today, so I have 2 slides. I'll just reiterate this very important study that came out just 2 weeks ago from Syracuse and Harvard, looking at clean air and health co-benefits from carbon standards. They modeled every fossil plant in the United States, and they did a specific scenario looking at the high energy efficiency scenario. So that's what's, when you look at the conclusions of the study, it said that is the one that gives the widest benefits. In other words, if we can embark upon a future that really emphasizes energy efficiency at the highest levels that we can do it, that's going to have the greatest health benefits. And you heard before that it was an estimate of avoiding 3,500 premature deaths annually by 2020. That's annually. That's the U.S. You saw this slide before. I encourage you, if you're interested in this, you can just, I Googled Syracuse University, but it's, I'm sure that Vanderbilt will have it widely available. But this is, very significant for Tennessee. I mean, in a 10-year period alone, 1,200 lives saved, 390 hospitalizations prevented, and 80 heart attacks prevented. And again, I'm certainly not a health expert, but I would bet these are very conservative estimates. And within the whole world of this Clean Power Plan, it's looking at the economics. So this is done within a regime of thinking about how are we going to do high energy efficiency without breaking the bank, frankly. But this is, in my mind, one of the most important studies that we've seen on the Clean Power Plan, because it really does quantify for every state to think about how they can benefit if they use energy efficiency. So now I'm just going to end with some of the work that I've been doing with others at Stanford and frankly around the country of new tools and opportunities in energy efficiency. I'll just go right to the second point because we've been talking about carbon emission reductions, and I'll just take a minute to say that the Clean Power Plan is looking at 2030. Part of our research has been looking at the modeling that's being done out to 2050. And that is telling us that while we have to increase our energy efficiency very significantly now, we have to be on a continuous trajectory to see about how we're really increasing it overall. Because one of the things that happens when you look at long-term carbon emission reductions is you basically have to decarbonize your electricity sector. You have to get away from fossil power plants. This is in the long run, which you can do it by using renewables, by using nuclear power, and if we have carbon capture and sequestration, you could use that. That is expensive to do. There is nothing there that's really cheap, though we do see the price of solar dropping as well as wind. The reason to do energy efficiency is that it decreases sharply over this 30-year period how much electricity has to be provided by the grid, even in these non-carbon situations. And so the studies show if we don't use energy efficiency to shrink the overall electric load, the cost of decarbonizing our grid is going to be much, much greater. Grid planning, avoiding T&D costs, without going into a lot of detail, when you do have areas where there is load growth, I heard about Nashville is definitely going to be increasing its population. At a certain level, you have to build new stuff on the distribution system, like you have to build a new substation. There's some very interesting work going on around the country that is saying if we do targeted energy efficiency programs where we know we would otherwise have to build a distribution station, can we avoid building that for a number of years? And the results are starting to be very positive. And again, this isn't something you typically see when you think about energy efficiency, but for a state like Tennessee, if it really embarks upon a whole new level of energy efficiency, it could also be smart about could we do some targeted areas to avoid these additional costs. You're going to be hearing this afternoon about behavior interventions. I had a chart, I didn't put it up because I didn't want to take away. But at Stanford, we have some really interesting research going on that I think matches up with Vanderbilt, that a lot of energy efficiency is people making voluntary decisions. And the social research in this area is starting to be really, really interesting about how could you use the understanding we have of getting people to make good social decisions in the context of energy efficiency. Very little has been done in this area. So this is an area where in my work at Stanford, we're making a recommendation on sort of an approach we could take. Intelligent efficiency, very quickly, is that I don't know if it's true here in Tennessee at all, but in some of the states around the country, you've had utilities put in these smart meters, advanced meters. And they read a whole lot of data, like every 15 minutes. Well, you have companies that have done advanced algorithms and software analytics where literally they can take that data for a year's worth, stream it through their algorithms, and out of it comes a very good understanding of, within a building, how much is being used for lighting, how much for HVAC, for the different uses. And you can think about it, right now we're pretty dumb about knowing what goes on in buildings. And in the heart of energy efficiency, except for transportation, it's buildings. It's basically a black box. We have somebody go in who will do an audit, but they show up one day out of the year, and what goes on in that building is, you know, you don't know that particular day how representative it is, plus it's very disruptive to the people in the building. And then out of that, they come back and make recommendations, do this, do that, do that. this whole new world of intelligent efficiency and advanced analytics is sort of like where medicine is now. You know, again, I'm not a doctor, but 100 years ago, you just basically have a doctor looking at you and say, what's going on? Whereas now we've got all these very detailed abilities with our CT scans, et cetera, to pull information out about what's going on in our body, and based on that, make a diagnosis of what's wrong and how to treat it. And that's what this really exciting new area is developing, which I think in 5 years and 10 years, we're going to say, we can't believe that's how we used to do efficiency, that we just sort of guess, did this building need something? Were these people in the building interested in doing it, et cetera? And then the last area, it was mentioned this morning, is financing. That energy efficiency may make a lot of sense. You may know over 5 years or 3 years you're going to save money, but it's not like the average person says, I think I'll just shell out, you know, $500 or $1,000 to do something for efficiency. So we've got some very interesting programs going on, some through the utility where they offer it on your bill so that you don't have to have any upfront payment and you get savings starting from year one. We also have some programs off of property tax bills called PACE, which the whole idea of all of these is that you don't have to shell out any money up front, and you start to see savings from day one, and then you really can see over time the benefit of the program. So those really are just some of the ideas that are coming out. I just added this chart because based, Ken, on what you said, I wanted to make sure I brought it up. And my apology, this is California, but it's the only one I had on this. What this is showing is over a 25, 35, 40-year period, the impact of energy efficiency in California. And this is, to make one point, it's not a bragging chart, though I'm happy to brag. But the bottom one line is the savings from building standards, and this is cumulative. The next one is the appliance standards. The one, the purple one is our utility programs. And I have not double-checked these numbers. They were just sent to me, so think of them as more as illustrative. But the important part is the top line is price effects. What that is the type of programs that Ken described with these energy service companies that may come in and just offer savings to a school or a hospital or a government facility. But it's also now increasingly picking up companies like a Walmart that says if we're going to build a building, we're just going to make it efficient. And this is why in 111D, they have made a commitment to count the programs. I think they also, for the state level building standards and appliances, a commitment to count those. What we are waiting from is that in the final rule, they will make a commitment to count what we call in California price and market effects, basically the non-utility, non-standard programs. And that's why I wanted to show that it's so important, because as a state like Tennessee, there's all sorts of ways, apart from just direct subsidies from utilities or mandatory standards, you probably can get people and businesses saving energy. And if that happens, you sure want to be able to get credit, because that's less electricity and natural gas being used in the state, and therefore less emissions from any of the fossil burning plants. So I did just add this because I'm increasingly trying to talk about tracking all energy efficiency regardless of the source that it comes from. So with that, I'm all done. Thank you.
Great.